Met 3.5 years ago when I came to this church, and actually we had a bond from the very beginning. Him and I did, and he also worked for us for a little bit. But James has had his struggles with alcohol and drugs and things in his life, and he hit rock bottom. And you know, my dad always told me when we're in a valley, when we're facing the valley, there's always a mountain top ahead of us. And when we're in the valley, the only place we can look is up. And that's what James did. And he's been in a program that is helping him with his addiction. And he grew up in this church, came to the youth department. And I've asked him, he just graduated from this program called Genesis. I've asked him to come and share his testimony with you. And James, are you ready? I know you've been excited.
Hey church, how are you? So thank you, Pastor, for letting me come up and share my testimony and speak. I have some of it wrote down, but I'm just going to kind of let God use me as a vessel and go with the flow. So I guess I'll start off with a verse. Irma actually just gave me this book, and this kind of ties in. So it says, How to Handle Suffering. That is why, for Christ's sake, I delight in weaknesses, in insults, in hardships, in persecutions, in difficulties. For when I am weak, then I am strong. 2 Corinthians 12:10. So I'll kind of go over a brief history of, how I got to where I'm at right now. So I was always kind of a troubled kid growing up. I like to kind of be the center of attention, kind of an outcast. For instance, running and hiding from my aunt at Americana for hours and having her worried to death. I grew up in this church. Casey Southern shared a lot of good times with me. So he got to see me grow up. I was a wild child too, so I was the baby, spoiled, got what I wanted usually. So around the age of 5, I was diagnosed with ADHD. So I was pretty much put on drugs at that age. And I struggled in school, I got in some trouble. I started drinking alcohol around the age of 11 or 12. I remember my first drink of alcohol I drank like 9 shots, a 60-pound-year-old kid, and I blacked out. Then of course I dabbled in the marijuana at age 12 and liked it. That's around the time I started in the youth group here at Immanuel, which really helped me grow close to the Lord. If it wasn't for Casey and the youth group, I would probably be pretty lost still. So God's kind of always had a hold on me since I was a kid, even though He always gave me the free will to make choices. I did make bad decisions. So I remember my sister pulled me in the room at the age of 13 and my parents split up. And I was very nervous, I was scared, I was embarrassed. I just didn't understand because a child is just filled with love. I didn't understand it at that time. But, if it wasn't for this church and my family, I don't know where I would be. So, after the divorce, I kind of did everything in school to be accepted. In 8th grade, I met a guy named Mark Hibbard that ended up being one of my best friends. We hung out and partied. 9th grade, I got busted with marijuana, fighting at the Butler County Fair. I remember my mom's face when she pulled up and I'm sitting in the back of a police car, 14, 15 years old. And it was just, that was the start. I don't know what it is about that lifestyle that kind of attracted me. I guess that's kind of the obsessive compulsive in my mind. So I remember when I was young too, my father had always tried to include me in everything, but I never showed any interest because I was so preoccupied with drugs and glorifying alcohol. I just wanted that lifestyle to kind of be accepted. I guess maybe a self-esteem issue or confidence. So I thank my father for always trying to be there for me and include me and stuff like that. So I continued to use drugs, throughout high school, along with, then came the cocaine, then came the LSD, mushrooms, pills. If I was drinking to blackout, not to just, have a drink. I couldn't just do that. I was the life of the party, I got in fights. It started getting more out of hand. And then at the age of 17, we were out, me and a group of my friends were partying out towards New Miami. And I watched, at 17, I watched my best friend get decapitated by a train. So I was scared. I don't know how I didn't have any blood on me that night, but for some reason God directed me to my sisters, and I was in disbelief the whole time until I seen it on the news. So it was rough, having to see that and see him right there. I mean, it was an instant thing. Those pictures never leave my mind, but, I've learned to cope with them and talk about it. So, after that, the drinking and stuff got a lot out of hand. I got suspended out of Saturday school because I came in hungover, smelled like alcohol really bad. But I got through school, I did graduate, got my diploma, and I remember I wanted to go to college, so I went, but for the wrong reasons. I went to party, which ended me up in Hamilton County Justice Center for a DUI back in 2008. So after that, I moved back home with my father. Still dabbled, still drank. And I remember at the age of 21, I stuck a needle in my arm for the first time. And I shot heroin. Didn't really like it, made me sick. So I didn't really touch it after that, just experiment. And I always remember some of my friends got really heavy into it at a young age, and I kind of veered away from them. But, and then after 21, I was selling. I went from doing drugs to selling drugs, and I still had a good job. I worked at UPS since I was 18. My life was still kind of manageable, I guess, and I was just living a life of complete sin and just partying any chance I got. I didn't care about anything else, just selfish and self-centered, and only cared about myself. Didn't take up any hobbies, which I completely regret, but I can still do that now at this age. It's a fresh start. So shortly after, 21, I was a big influence in my cousin's life. He's younger than me, always looked up to me. While we were partying in Clifton, and these two guys walked up on us. I let my cousin get in a fight with them. Then I ended up jumping in and, hit somebody with brass knuckles. And we came back, we went back in the house, and it was my fault, but the guys come back down and my cousin gets shot right in front of me. And I'll never forget that. It weighed on me a lot because of what I'd done. My actions probably had caused that. So that was pretty rough to deal with, just knowing that. I know my family was very ashamed because the uncle that I'm named after actually was shot and killed too, and to put another family member in that situation just, I'm sure killed him. So, I still partied. I wasn't using opiates at the time. I was selling drugs. Still, around the age of 25, one of my close friends, he died in a car accident, but I still stayed in contact with his family. His name was Jimmy Lawson. I remember being over at his house and we were all partying, using, in his leg, he just had surgery. He became an amputee, but they were trying to fix his legs, and I remember I saved his life. God had put me there because of that, and if I wasn't, he would have died. He tried to stand up and put pressure on his leg, and I remember the blood, and it just bursted open all over me, and I went into survival mode and ripped his shirt off, put cool rags on him. It was very traumatic for me because I thought he was, pretty much dead. Then after that's when my life started spiraling out of control. I got arrested in Chicago with 2 ounces of cocaine. And I was tied in with some very, very heavy people that knew where I lived, where my family lived, who they were. I put a lot of people at risk with these drug dealers, and they would kill you. And they tested me with that. They had held me at gunpoint and everything to see if I would ever break. So I was getting into a lot of drugs, I had made a lot of money. I remember I was in my dad's basement and I had shoe boxes of money, and I was just like, I don't know how to clean money. And I was very scared, and my dad had no idea what I was really doing. Nobody did. I stayed under the radar. But around the time I was arrested in Chicago, that's whenever I started on a prescription drug called oxycodone. I didn't have a prescription for the drug, but I started dabbling in it because I had plenty of it. I was selling it. Didn't hurt my pockets. It was more of a recreational thing. Then it became like, oh man, I'm starting to feel sick. I think I need this every day. And that's how it gets you. After that, I remember I became my money started blowing. I started going through a lot of money that I had saved up. And after that, I kind of stopped caring. So any chance I got to make money, quick money, I would. I had a gun pulled on me shortly after, I got on the oxycodone. I was thirsty for some money, and I had a gun pulled on me. And I remember looking at this, down the barrel of this gun, and everybody's like, man, just give him the dope, just give him the dope. And I didn't. I pulled back, wrestled. I could have been shot. They didn't hit me with the butt of the gun. And God spared my life at that time. Because they didn't care. Well, a week later, the guy that robbed me actually got shot in the back of the head. Shortly after, he had robbed me. And I was very upset, just trying to make quick money, and then I was sick, so. Let's see here. So, about 26 now, I'm hooked. I would do any drug that you put in front of me, I'm gonna do. I chased the first high all the time. I was still driving for UPS, and I was still, I started dealing in the cocaine. That was a huge part of my addiction, was the dealing. I was even dealing it on my route, driving for UPS. I was very reckless. So, God had some plans for me. I ended up wrecking a UPS truck, and I got fired. I got my job back. I went in high, got fired again, get my job back, failed a urine screen, walked out, never tried. So I've been kind of lost with a career after that. And then I struggled. I met some girl, and we that's when I really started using heroin. I went through about think I had like $40,000 at one point, and I blew through all of it, buying heroin, plus more from working. You know, I definitely put my aunt through it and my family through it, always asking for money. I was lying, I was manipulative. All I cared about was that next hit. You know, I wake up every day now and I pray, and I thank God for that. Before I would wake up and I just want to get high. And I was a complete prisoner to that drug. So at 28, I had called a rehabilitation center, and God really shined His light on me. At this point, I remember I was driving on Main Street, right by BP, on the west side, when you cross over those railroad tracks. Something just came over me, and I pulled my car over to the side of the road, and I just broke down. I had never really, when you're on heroin, you're kind of very numb. You don't show very much emotion. And that was the first time I had probably cried. And I don't even know. But it put something on me that day. So I drove straight over to my father's, and I had to look him in the eyes and tell him that his son was addicted to heroin. It was very hard for me to put my family through that. The next day I flew out to Florida for a 30-day treatment at Singer Island. Was not long enough. You know, it wasn't faith-based or anything like that. But I didn't know what to do. I was just tired of being sick and tired. Every day dealing with the same thing, I had to get away. So I came back. I was clean for about 80 days total. I was clean for like 50 when I got home. But of course, the addiction in my mind, I can pick up. I can handle it. I got this, you know. And I actually thank God for that, because now I know that there's no way possible if I put a drink or drug in my body, I'm going straight to the hard stuff. You know, it's got that way. So I was right back in it, and I'm like, all right, well, now I'm sick again. So my idea, I'm just going to go to an outpatient Suboxone clinic and just get on medicine. So really, I was on opiates still. It's just an opiate agonist. That's all it is. Suboxone. You're sick if you don't have it. So I got on Suboxone. I think I was working with the pastor around that time. And my idea was, I'm just going to save up money and I'm just going to go right back to dealing. You know, that's really all I knew, because I know it's quick money, easy money. I know a lot of people, so you know, I did that, and I ended up losing my apartment at my mother and stepfather's because I had a very incident where I was winding myself up in a psych ward. You know, I was very sick. My dad had to sleep right next to me. He was very worried. But I wasn't ready to surrender yet. And I know that crushed my dad and my stepmom, both of them, all my parents and my family, because I didn't want to give in yet, you know. So I moved in with this girl and, you know, kept on dealing, supporting us both. You know, we ended up moving into her father's house. Well, it was July 16, 2018, about 12:30 p.m. I was driving back from Dayton, picking up somebody to do a dope run or whatever. I got stopped for fictitious tags on I-75 South. They had searched the car, and they had found just under a quarter ounce of cocaine, 60 Valiums, and a crack pipe. So I remember sitting in the back of that police car, crying out. You know, whenever something happens to a person and they're scared, they always say, God, you know, or before somebody gets in a wreck, it's like, oh my God. That was my rock bottom. I'll never forget that. Even I was always under the influence, so I remember just crying out, like, why God? Like, what's going on? Like, you know, and little did I know that that was a huge blessing, because it's brought me, you know, here in front of you guys today. That if it wasn't for me getting picked up that night, I wouldn't probably be standing in front of you. So the next day they OR'd me, and I was still on Suboxone. So I just stopped caring after I caught that felony. You know, my life's over. So I got back on the fentanyl, heroin. I overdosed with nobody around. God woke me up. I remember I was at somebody's house, and I did some, and I fell out. I woke up on my stomach. Definitely overdosed. Was out for a while. Then I started having seizures because I was taking benzos. If I didn't have those, I would have seizures, which you can actually die from. I was just ready to go. I was selfish, and I didn't care about how anybody else felt. I just wanted to stop hurting. And little did I know that the way to stop hurting is through God. You know, I remember falling out where I was staying. You know, I was getting high, and I fell. Went out completely. Then I wound up in the hospital with seizures. You know, I was still dealing at the time, and a friend of mine, I fell out in his car for a while. He actually took what was in my hand. He didn't know it was fentanyl, and done it. He almost died. He overdosed. So, I mean, I could have had a few lives on my hand. I've even sold people drugs, and they've passed, and I've had to make amends with certain people because of that. I thank God for where He's put me today. I went to court October 1st, 2018, for that felony, and I remember pulling up, and my father was sitting in a car. And I didn't tell my family I got in trouble, and it was like, oh gosh, like I don't even know how to explain myself. I was so embarrassed, you know. And he's been through this whole trip with me. My whole family has, and I did not expect that. So I went in, and I was dirty. They were going to put me out on a pre-trial or whatever. So I went in, and I failed my drug screen for. I don't even know how I was alive. Fentanyl, heroin, benzos, MDMA, MDA, methamphetamine, and coke. I lit it up. They said, you're not going anywhere. And I remember waiting for every court date. My dad on the phone. I talked to my dad twice a day in there, every day. And I just was like, man, I think I'm going to get out. I think I'm going to get out. And God just was like, no. You're not going anywhere. He kept me put, and He kept me sat there because He did have a plan for me, and I didn't understand it yet. So I went to court on November 30th for sentencing. I sat for a while, 5 months about. Went to court, and they sentenced me to a camp in Lebanon with a year of prison over my head. And I asked for Genesis, which is a treatment facility in Hamilton, Ohio. And I didn't know much about it. I knew it was faith-based. And God put me in jail because He put a Bible in front of me too, which was huge. I've had a Bible on my nightstand, I don't know how long, and never really picked it up. I read first couple verses of James at the last treatment, but that was it. So I sat and I waited, and I was frustrated, like, man, I just want to get outpatient. I want this ankle monitor. So I surrendered then. I said, all right, well, I'm going to go to this program. I'm going to do 90 days there. And I stopped counting days after that. I really started to live in the moment. If it wasn't for Genesis, that program is amazing. They've helped me tremendously. There's actually a program called Jobs Plus. One of the ladies is here today that's helped me along my road, finding a career and being able to actually start my life. It's amazing. If you truly want the help is out there. If any of you guys have any family members struggling, I highly recommend that you try to get them into the Genesis program. I remember getting there and being like, man, this is just, it's not nice, and I was just real picky, and it all ended up being a blessing, and I started to realize it's not about what something looks like, it's about how God works through that place. And He worked huge. I thank God for it. And I thank God for everybody in this church that has watched me grow up through my teenage years and slowly become a young man. God always gave me the free will to make a choice. I just made bad ones, but it eventually paid off. I count all trials and tribulations as blessings now. Because if it weren't for those, I wouldn't be in front of you and able to share a testimony. I'm thankful for all of my family. I look back on it and how selfish I wasn't for them to still be sitting in these seats supporting me. It is a huge thing. So I love each and every one of you, and I thank you for everything you've done for me. And it's been a long road. I'm tired. I'm able to. I actually got offered an apprenticeship at a car store to start a career. So God is definitely working in my life, and it's awesome. As long as you surrender and you just do God's work. I remember right when I'm at sober living now in Cincinnati, the other day there was a homeless guy. I was like, just let me pray for you. Something came over me, and I think that's how God works. I've never done that before, but I was like, man, I said a pretty powerful prayer. God just wanted to use me to get to Him. So yeah, I thank everybody here, and thank you for letting me share my testimony. Hopefully I can just carry it on and do God's work and stay on the right path. And thank you, Pastor, Casey, Carol, my whole family, Irma, watching me grow up as a young man. But yeah, thank you. I believe that's all I got.
Amen. God is good, isn't He? One thing I got out of that was what He said. He said, if you want help, there's help out there. And I think there's so many people that don't want help. And they make excuses. James, God has a plan for your life. He has spared you on many occasions. And He has a purpose for your life and a plan for your life. Follow through with that. Surrender everything you have to Him, and you'll see how good He is. I want to just take the time right now, as the guys, they've been standing out there for a while. We do this once a month, and your giving has just... I've been involved with ministry. I've always told myself that I will follow the Holy Spirit wherever He wants to go, especially in a service or whatever it may be. I appreciate all the hard work that has been put into our service and getting all the sermons and notes and all that stuff in. But I feel that we need to get the deacons to get ready for communion. And I just want to share this with you. The Bible says that there is none righteous. No, not one. That means every one of us in this room have sinned. There's not one perfect person in this room. Some of us have been raised up in great homes, really didn't face a lot of difficulties in our life. We dabbled with some things. We had some heartaches, brokenness. But there's others that have really struggled through life. Whatever reason that may be, whatever's caused that, we don't really know. It's just God has a different plan and a different purpose for each and every one of us. None of us are the same. Thank God we're not the same. Amen. None of us are going down the same road. God is choosing different paths for each and every one of us. What you struggle with, somebody else may have a strength in that. What they struggle with, you may be strengthened in. The reason why God does that is because He tells us to come alongside one another and encourage one another and pray for one another. The story of James today is a story of a young man that for some reason God has taken him down a different path. I don't say that's the will of God for his life. I believe James made choices that got him off of God's will. But the bottom line is this. At the end of it, God has brought him back to His will. And has a purpose for him. It's the same thing for all of our lives. None of us are righteous. All have sinned and come short of the glory of God. The wages of sin is death. But the gift of God is eternal life. It's nothing that we've done, folks. It's everything that He's done. And that picture that you see on the wall is what it's all about. Everything points to the cross, and everything points back to the cross. The cross was the altar of Jesus Christ and the ultimate sacrifice that He laid down for us. We are about to participate in what we call communion. Communion is a beautiful thing. Communion is us coming together with Christ and saying, Lord, we understand what the bread represents. The bread represents your body that was broken for us. We understand what the cup is. The cup is your blood. And without the blood of Christ, there is no remission of sin. This is not to be taken lightly. This is a serious moment. If you are not in unity with God, I challenge you, as these men walk forward today, I challenge you to get that right now. Do not take of this communion and not be in communion with God. It's not good. Get that communion right. And right now is the time to do that. I'm going to ask you to bow your heads. Take this moment. If you're here today and you've never accepted Jesus Christ as your personal Savior, right now, is your appointed time. If you walked in this room today with a question in your mind, is there truly a God? I think God has answered that for you today in the life of James Blevins. If there ever was a God, He's real. And I think He stood in front of you today with James and took that young man's testimony and is saying to you, I am real. But like James said, you have to come to a point where you totally surrender. Are you willing to do that? Trust me, following Christ costs you something. The salvation of Christ is free. God gave it to us as a gift. It's our choice to receive it. Serving Christ costs you something. And what it costs you is your life for Him. Surrendering everything that you are to Him. Because you're His anyway. The very breath that you are breathing right now is God allowing you to take that breath. Everything you see, everything that you sense, everything that you feel is God. There's nothing without God. We can do all things with Him, and we are nothing without Him.